We'll just wait for 5 or 10 minutes.
Yes, the children are here and they're standing around. Small announcement, they'll just start.
Come inside. Okay, I'll just go and...
Excuse me?
Yes, sir?
Institute of Local like paralysis. Should be sir.
So how will you go come by Delhi? Just no. There's one more course. It's a bit longer. I wish now I'd say. From here, and then the lesson.
Good morning, everyone. Esteemed speakers, respected authors, and all the literary enthusiasts present here today. It's an honor to stand before you as the host for this session. I am Aftara from the Department of English, Dibrugarh University. In this session titled Primordial Literature, Languages and Their Readers, we will be hearing from our remarkable speakers. It is my privilege to introduce to you our distinguished panelists. Firstly, I take this opportunity to introduce the chair, Sir A.J. Thomas. I request him to be please escorted to the stage. Sir A.J. Thomas is an Indian English poet and translator with more than 20 books to his credit. He has edited Sahitya Academy's bi-monthly journal, Indian Literature, for about 17 years in different capacities. Besides translating and editing several works, he co-edited Sahitya Academy's Best of English Literature, published in 2 books and 4 volumes. He is a recipient of Katha Award, AKMG Prize, and Vodafone Crossword Award. He is also a holder of Senior Fellowship from Department of Culture, Government of India, and Honorary Fellow of Government of South Korea. A round of applause for him, please. I introduce to you our next speaker, Sir Damodar Mozo. I request him to be please escorted to the stage. Sir Damodar Mozo is a short story writer and novelist writer in Konkani. He is also a columnist, critic, and scriptwriter. He has over 25 books to his credit, besides his edited and translated works. He received Jnanpith Award, India's highest literary award, in 2022. His other awards include Sahitya Academy Award and Karnataka's Basava Bibhushana Award and Katha Award. His short story collection, Teresa's Man and Other Stories, was nominated for Frank O'Connor International Short Story Award in 2015. He is also a co-founder and co-curator of Goa Arts and Literature Festival. A round of applause for him, please. Moving on, I request our volunteers to please escort our next speaker, Sir Jnaneshwar Mulay, to the stage. Jnaneshwar Mulay is a former diplomat and an author. As a diplomat, he served as Indian High Commissioner to Maldives and Consul General in New York. He has over 15 published works, including Mati, Punk, Ani Akash, which has been included in the curriculum at North Maharashtra University. He also founded an orphanage in his native village. He is currently an advisor to the National Skill Development Corporation. A round of applause for him, please. I take the honor now to invite Circulado Saikia to the stage. I request him to be escorted to the stage. Circulado Saikia, a former Director General and Police, Assam is also an acclaimed author and filmmaker. He has 26 short story collections, 5 plays, a novel and 2 telefilms to his credit. A winner of Sahitya Academy Award and Katha Prize, he is also a Fulbright fellow at Pennsylvania State University. He is a regular contributor to literary magazines and national dailies. He has been a great speaker in several prestigious educational institutions in India and abroad. A round of applause from the please. Last but not the least, I request our volunteers to escort Sir Gaston Doran to the stage. Sir Gaston Doran writes popular books on linguistics. In Lingo, he playfully deals with the linguistic landscape of his home continent, Europe. In his award-winning Babel, the world's 20 most widely spoken languages, including Hindi, Urdu, Bengali, Tamil, and Punjabi, are portrayed from surprising angles. He has written 4 more books on linguistics in his native tongue, Dutch. Sir Doran also speaks several European languages. A round of applause for all of our esteemed panelists, please. Our rapporteurs for this session are Dia Paul and Josrang Basumatari from the Center for Studies in Journalism and Mass Communication. Without any further delay, let us move towards the highlights of this session, that is the panel discussion. I would like to hand over the session to the chair now. Thank you.
Good morning, friends. It's lovely seeing your faces once again from the stage. Let me first of all thank the organizers, Parallel Sir, Mr. Dhruva Hasarika and Mr. Rahul Jain for inviting me here and making it possible to interact with you. I'm honored by the presence on stage with me of such esteemed literary personalities like Sri Damodar Mahoso, Ambassador Jnaneshwar Muley, Dr. Kuladhar Saikia, and Dr. Gaston Doran. And Mr. Gaston Doran is an acclaimed linguist, in fact the only scientifically qualified panelist among us to authoritatively speak on the technical aspects of the subject at hand. The word primordial in the context of literature means the very first. Primordial literature would be creative writing in one's own mother tongue. However, primordiality implies first beginnings, which can best be described by the Sanskrit word adi. The session is aimed to highlight how literary works in one's mother tongue end up inspiring interest in other literary works, progressing beyond its borders, according to the people who designed this session. This is their words. I think this also implies that we should trace the influence of creative works in our early life that fed our curiosity, interest, and passion in literature, and how that inspired the creative writer in each one of us, and how that passionate involvement in mother tongue literature led us on to the study and consequent proficiency in other literatures, and even bilingual creativity and multilingual communication skills. When a discussion is about the role of the mother tongue in creative writing, I think each one of us will quickly go back to our childhoods, when we all carried to school the language primers of our mother tongues in our primary classes. I'm citing the case of poetry alone here, from the memories of my childhood. In fact, I remember the short excerpts from the works of poets beginning with the father of Malayalam literature, Tunjat Ezhuthachan, and his early contemporary, Cherushairi Namboothiri of the 16th and 17th centuries. And then the 18th century stalwarts like Kunjan Nambiyar, Unai Warrior, Ramapurathu Warrior, and the stalwarts of the 19th century, the early 20th century, and the later 20th century, the great names. I'm skipping the long list because it will be particularly meaningless, because you will not be in any way acquainted with the names, so why should I saddle you with so many names? But these are, all of them, I can remember the lines from the works of almost all these remarkable poets, even now, as a result of the enduring efforts of our Malayalam teachers who made us learn those lines by heart. And only for scoring, not only for scoring marks in exams, but to recite and enjoy later on. These vignettes will live in me till my last days, I'm sure. This is how my mother tongue has inspired me to be a lover of poetry in my mother tongue, and later becoming a translator of poetry first, before I started translating short stories and drama, and before I began translating long-form fiction. There's an interesting interlude during my young years away from my mother tongue, living in Bandel, a town in West Bengal on the banks of the river Hooghly. Here, far removed from Malayalam, English replaced my mother tongue as the step-mother tongue, so to say. This was as a result of the Salesians. I'm sure the Salesians of Don Bosco in Dibrugarh, they have a headquarters here, they have around education institutions. So they are very zealous about teaching and other things. So Salesians of Don Bosco introducing English as a surrogate mother tongue for us. Students who were the inmates of a boarding school they ran. We, the students, hailed from different parts of India and had different mother tongues. And there I was not allowed, if possible, as it were, even to dream in Malayalam. This exigency gave me my second mother tongue, English, which filled the gap readily, and I grew up writing my poems in English. Mine may be an exception, but in my case, both languages are practically my mother tongues. Obviously, mother tongue acquisition is a process in which we learn our first language, that is through being involved in our earliest communication and without formal teaching and learning. As we learn, we hypothesize rules and use this to communicate until we notice that the rule is different in different contexts or has exceptions. Whatever language we use for our first communications is the decisive factor in our acquisition of later languages, as we firstly translate mentally into our mother tongue whatever we learn in the language we acquire next. Now I invite you one by one to share your experiences. I think I'll ask a first round of questions to all of you, lasting 5 minutes each. And then we'll come to the second round again, 5 minutes. And there will be some time left. And I think the panelists can interact among themselves for some time, permitting the time limit, and then throw it open for the audience. This is a plan. Let's see. But in the meanwhile, I think I will give more time to the technical expert here. So I'll take a little of time from all the three of you and give him a little more time. I think I'll ask a first round of questions about your earliest memories of your mother tongue acquisition and the readings of the basic literary works in that language and the beginnings of your creative journeys. Then in the second round, I will ask you about your explorations of other languages and literatures, including your own bilingual creations, if any. You will have roughly 5 minutes, like I told you. First, I'll begin with you, Damodar sir.
Very good morning to all of you, my panelists especially. Well, the topic is rather lengthy one. Probably this topic can run into a 2-day symposium. So big. Primordial literature. Well, I do not know the primordial days, what my surname belonged to, my ancestors belonged to, what was the primordial state of my state, Goa. But then one thing, as we speak of primordial literature, and particularly when it's related to readers, I am in two minds. What is primordial literature for us? It is the oral literature, the folk tales, folk literature, that to my knowledge it comes first. Before that, what was existing, I do not know, particularly in literature. Yesterday I was listening to another session here, Myth and Realities. I was struck, I was really surprised that so many myths that exist in a distant northeastern language, the same myths exist in my language, the distant state on the western part of this country. So there are so many similarities. Yet, to speak of my language, it will take nearly a day to explain to you. I write in Konkani, a language that is of Konkan, and particularly now it is the official language of Goa. My language has suffered tremendously at the hands of the history. Our history has, the language was meted with so many atrocities. I can't even, spell them out because, after all, I want to put it behind because it was our history. But the the oral literature that inspired me to become what I am today. So I am really indebted to the folk literature of Konkani, of the oral literature that existed in Konkani. When we speak of languages, my friend Thomas spoke of his first language and second language. What you said, Axel? Stepmother tongue. For me, I know more than 5 languages. It was mandatory for me to learn the Portuguese. I was born during the colonial rule, so I studied Portuguese in school. My mother tongue is Konkani. The other language which I read, and I'm a voracious reader of literature in that language, is Marathi, my neighboring state's language. Then the Hindi was compulsory in the school at the secondary level, but I love languages, so I tried to master that language, and English is medium of instructions, and then I also can fairly well converse in Gujarati also. But what I'm more important is I remember what Kamala Das, the Malayalam and English language writer, she said. She said, I quote her, I know 3 languages, I write in 2 languages, and I dream in 1 language. That the language in which I dream is Konkani. And I'll be brief in expressing my views on Konkani literature. The first and foremost is the oral literature. And if you come to, if you want to speak about the formal literature, which came into being much later, even the Bhakti Sahitya was written in many languages, Indian languages. Goa was under the suppressive rule, under the colonial rule, where the language was banned by passing a law, by passing a decree, banning the language even in speech. And this happened in 1684, when Bhakti Sahitya was rising, growing in, not only in India, the rest of the world also. It was the missionaries who came to Goa. They started writing the Bhakti Sahitya in Konkani, but it was limited to propagate the religion. So it was very difficult to even keep up the oral traditions in Konkani, because when there was a ban on using the language even in speech, the people had to discreetly keep it alive. I am really grateful to my ancestors who, in spite of the ban on speech, they kept the language alive. It continued to remain lingua franca in Goa and the surrounding areas. I'll not go in details of the surrounding areas because any language, I always insist, what is the language of, when we speak of mother tongue, I could have asked the students, I don't know, I don't want to waste time on getting answers from you. But do you know what mother tongue is? Most of you I know will say the mother tongue is the tongue that you learned from your mother, right? It is not true. not entirely true. It is not wrong, but it is not in entirety. See, you speak the language that belongs to your mother soil, not your own mother, your mother soil, your motherland. That is why the people of Assam, they speak only Assamia. All people of Assam speak Assamia. All the people in France, they speak French. All the people in Netherlands, they speak Dutch. I'm talking about the ethnic people. The language also belongs to the ethnic people, ethnic nation. So language belongs to the language, motherland. That is why it is mother tongue. Unfortunately, our mother remained in shackles. That's the reason why it lagged behind in creating the modern literature. Our speech, language, our Konkani remained in prison. And whenever I think of my language and literature, I remember the very, very touching story by the German, by the French author, Alphonse Daudet, who wrote The Last Lesson. If anybody of the students here have read the story, I'll be very happy. If you have not read it, try to get it. Even on your mobile, you will get it. The Last Lesson by Alphonse Daudet. It's a very touching language. He says, if you lose your mother tongue, it is like you are imprisoned. The key to the prison is thrown away. That means you forever are imprisoned. So that was the state of condition for me and my people in Goa. Fortunately, people kept it alive in spite of the ban, and finally, after liberation of Goa in 1961, Goa was liberated. Until then, the rest of India was liberated. They got the independence. Goa did not. I had to travel, if I want to travel across the border of Goa, even to go to Karwar or go to Mumbai, then I had to show the passport. I didn't have a passport as such, but we had the documents. We called it Bilit de Intendari. That I had to show and then cross the border. The way you cross to Nepal or Bhutan, it is the same thing. Of course, it is much milder now here. But for us, it was rigorous traveling. We leave Goa in the morning and just cross the border in the evening or late in the evening. That was the state of, that was the condition then. So I don't want to, stick to the history of my language. But yes, in spite of the ban, in spite of these harsh days, we continue to create literature. It was not possible. There was a lot of censorship in my state. But our people, our creative people, some had to run away from the state. They remained in exile. They crossed the borders and went up to Bombay or Pune, and there they continued to write in my language, in their language. So that is why we have writers who started the modern language movement of Konkani by remaining in Mumbai or Pune and other places. Thank you. That's just to start with.
Thank you, Damodar sir, for this very touching account of how you suffered, like for 400 years, losing even the memory of folk tales. This is something that's beyond imagination, really. And yet, the resilience of the Konkani people, they carried it over so many centuries. And now it's alive, and in Sahitya Academy, I know how zealously the Konkani people, how proudly they uphold their literature. So now we'll request Dr. Kulazar Saikia about his memories of acquisition of Ahomia, or whatever language. I suppose it was there, or a dialect of Ahomia, was it? It was very, but that would be the standard language. But there will be again this folk tales, myths. The colloquial. You don't go straight into the standard language. So your memories of acquiring that the early entry into the mother tongue, and then how you developed. The other things we'll discuss in the next section.
Thank you. What he said is, when do I acquire my language first, my mother tongue? Very dangerous to say, because I don't remember. Not even any child will remember when they learned first mother tongue, no? The first word. I especially don't remember because I was born immature, 7 months. I was born in 7 months, so people thought, the parents thought he will not survive. So I had a very sort of different time. So I don't even remember my first word, but any child in my place, in my state, is born and grown up with the feeling of the language called Assamese, and there are other people, other communities which they have their own languages, they start growing like that. But in my case, but one thing I have realized, that the primordial languages are so important because this is the ancient forms of written or oral expression. And when I stand in front of the mirror, today I was, parting my hair with a comb, even though there was no hair. So when I stood in front of the mirror, I realized that when I thought about this, particularly the primordial languages, the impact of it, I found that me or anyone is like a museum. All the human beings are like museums, We carry forth all the past genetic materials, past linguistic materials, past, our rituals, everything. We have been borrowing it from the ancient times over the generations. So the words we speak are basically spoken long years earlier, and the particular thing about Assamese language is it had a historical hiccup in many stages. In 1836, we lost the language in official space when the Britishers came. Then 1872, we had to go through a lot of fights to get the status back again. So we have that historical fear about our language. When we're studying in the schools about Assamese language, my own mother tongue, I didn't even realize such type of historical problems we used to have. But slowly and gradually, when I had gone to study in Delhi in English universities, like, Delhi University and Delhi School of Economics, I found that when two of us were speaking, I'm talking about 70s, late 70s, when two Assamese boys will be talking, then somebody will ask us, what is this language? Oh, this is Assamese. What is this Assamese language? You think this is, offshoot of some other language? Such type of things we used to hear. So that time only we thought, that special attempt will have to be made so that our original language, the primordial language, is how it has impacted our life and how the particular well-developed language we have got over time, we have to bring it to the world, right? So recently, you might be aware that the Assamese was declared as a classical language in another 5, along with another 4 languages. So while preparing the particular report, to show our ancientness, we prepared a 394-page report. While preparing that report, we realized how old this language is. You can see in linguists, a very well-known linguist in Assam called Dr. Golok Goswami. He used to say, if you try to trace back the origin of any language, don't go by only phonology, don't go by only the syntax or such type of things. Go by the history, go by the anthropology, go by the archaeology, and use geography even, right? So we try to collect all the inputs from everything possible, music, folklore, folk songs, etc. Because that will give us the history of our language development. So we could show in our language, in our report to the government of India that how it is around 1500 to 2000 year old language as per today's evidences. Fine. Now, just very little on how I felt about the whole thing about preparing the report. See, folklores, folk tales have tremendous impact in our life. Buriya Hadu is grandmother's tale has impacted every child in Assam. And when they learn Assamese language, they start with that only in the bed when their parents would tell them the stories. So just one little example of how stories can be so enriching and it's so universal meaning. When I was studying in Pennsylvania State University as a Fulbright fellow, one day I went to the library and pulled out a book. You know what? We have a tradition when a child has the first tooth, the old tooth comes down and we throw it to the roof and saying that, take it and take the, we ask the rat to give a new tooth to us. You remember all my children? Do you remember? So, you know what? Throw the tooth to the roof was the name of the book, right? And it says that this particular tradition is, I've counted the countries there, it's more than 155 countries. They have different ways of treating this particular thing, when the new tooth comes, how to throw the old teeth. That sort of a thing, it's so universal. So I could go on later on after some different aspects of the language and things like that. But first thing is how storytelling has been so impactful in our life, and that's why puppetry and things like that are so popular. The ghost stories are so popular in this place and all over. Thank you. We'll go later.
Now, Mule Sahib, let me begin by asking you about your mother tongue. Was it a dialect of Marathi or a standard Marathi which you grew up in? Like Kuloswagi have said, you were surrounded by the myths and the colloquial use of the language. Then how was the process? Can you tell me?
Certainly, I think I'll go a little bit in the past, my childhood. I do believe that all of us have a linguistic DNA in us. Now that is like racial purity. Purity is also a myth. So I am actually kind of an inheritor of a very rich Indian tradition, rich Indian language tradition. When I started to think about this topic, I realized that I'm actually not a linguist like him, but I do like to see the root of my language. I like to also see the root of other languages, Indian and other non-Indian languages also, how the word has been seen by different traditions and different folks all over the world. And a quick comparison, if you don't mind, and then I'll come back again to my roots, because this is not only my roots, this is the root of the entire humanity. And I do feel that in one sense, today's globalized world, I am an inheritor of all these languages, some of which are today endangered, and some of which have now extinguished, gone. So Bible says, for example, in the beginning there was word. And then it says that the word was with the God, and then word was God. Then flesh was, came into it and it dwelt amongst us. That's how Bible sees the. So I was wondering how Islam sees it. And Islam, apparently the Islamic conventional view is that the first word that was revealed in Quran to Muhammad, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was Ikra. which means read or recite. It was related to the word. Then I came to the Indian thought. And then I realized that we have a slightly, I can say it with some pride also, a broader view of how the word was born. And we trace it to Big Bang, from which we believe that the word Om came. I'm not saying it out of imagination. This is what has been very well documented in Indian thought from Rig Veda and other Vedas also. But it's also therefore come into Indian languages. Now Marathi comes. Sant Gyaneshwar, the 12th century, whose name I derive proudly, he has very interestingly deciphered the word Om. And he says, U, Ma, and he's explained its significance. And then he says, He Tini Ekavatale, Teta Shabda Brahma Kavala. These three elemental sounds came together and the universe of word evolved. That's how it is described. And beautiful Marathi, of course it's old Marathi, nevertheless, it is still alive. And then when I look at bilinguistic roots, I just feel so rich, because as you rightly said, that we not only derive the language as in alphabets or Varanakshar or Moolakshar, we also derive the folk songs, the drama, the music, the entire spectrum of art and culture. Yesterday I was in Dingjoy Satra, and I was able to see Madhav Dev's and Shankar Dev's scriptures there written in hand. And I remembered my father, in his own handwriting, he has written Bhagavad Puranam, Jnaneshwari, then Bhagavad Gita. So coming back to my roots, language existed all around me. I was just one, kind of sprout there in the field of language. I learned it in the fields. I learned it in the kitchen with my mother. I learned it while talking to my friends, playing, because every word is unique. And it grows, as you rightly said. It is not only my boli is mother tongue in Marathi, but it's also Matrubhumi, the soil in which the language grows. And soil is, each ecosystem, linguistic ecosystem, could be so different and yet very similar depending on where you are in the civilization. So in the house, we used to listen to the abhangs, which is equivalent to bhajans of Kabir or dohas of Kabir.